Welcome to the latest episode of the Pitchside broadcast. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. Welcome in the episode and join us for more. You're welcome. Let's kick things off quickly by talking about the African Cup of Nations, and before the final that we will get on Sunday, we had actually the third place match between Burkina Faso and Cameroon, of course, the host nations, who were eliminated by Egypt in the semi-final. And it went the distance, it went to penalties. Expectedly, I think Cameroon played with a second tier of players, obviously. I mean, it was a meaningless match anyway. It was moved to the Ahmadou Ahidjo Stadium, the other stadium in Yaoundé. It was not in front of a packed stadium. There were not a lot of fans. I would say it was more Burkinabe fans than the Cameroonian fans. Burkinabe fans who were expecting a third place, hoping for a third place, which would have been a great finish in of itself for Burkina Faso after a brilliant tournament for them, I would say. Cameroon, they were losing 3-0. Everything looked done and dusted, really, for most of the game. But then, of course, they brought in Abubakar in the second half. They brought in Zamongisa in the second half. They brought in those main players, to salvage at least a third place, at least to look decent and to look fine in the eyes of Samuel Eto'o, I suppose. They won 5-3 on penalties, and they managed, of course, to get that third place, which is a disappointing win, a disappointing result, obviously, for Cameroon, considering the hype about them, the fact that they wanted to win the tournament in the first place. It's a pretty disappointing, of course, result for Cameroon. Obviously, the final will be played on Sunday. From the African Cup of Nations, we'll talk about that tomorrow again, to the FIFA Club World Cup, and after Al Jazeera qualified to the second round to face Al-Ahly of Saudi Arabia, of course, that will be today, that will be on Sunday, as I'm recording this. Al-Ahly, the champions of Africa, defeated the CONCACAF champions Monterrey 1-0. Now, that might not sound very impressive. Al-Ahly, of course, have won before. They have reached third and fourth place before in this tournament. They've been third just last year against Palmeiras in Qatar. But I think it was, this is different, and this is more inspiring and more impressive, because Al-Ahly lost loads of players, or they were missing loads of players. On this one, they have at least 6 or 7 players with the national team in the African Cup of Nations, including the main goalkeeper, basically the whole defensive line. And then, of course, they had as well, players missing for injuries, no Percy Tau, and all of that. And yet they put on an unbelievable display, I would say, against Monterrey, who are a really good side. Like, they are an experienced side in the FIFA Club World Cup. They're regulars in that competition and all of that. So they pretty much know what to do in situations like these. But Al-Ahly put on, as I mentioned, a very impressive display with those players being out. They focused, they created loads of chances. Everybody's expecting probably Al-Ahly to be the dominated side, considering the injuries and the absentees they had, and the fact that they basically lacked the whole first team. But they managed to put on a great performance, win by the sole goal of Mohamed Hani in the 53rd minute to book themselves a place in a semi-final, a historic semi-final that will pit them against the side that they beat last year, which is Palmeiras, of course, the Libertadores champions, the Copa Libertadores winners, for the second time in a row. I think that will be a very tasty semi-final. Of course, the other semi-final would be decided who's going to be meeting Chelsea in the semi-final. Is it going to be a blue match, 100% between Al-Ahly and Chelsea, or will be Al Jazeera? We'll know that today. To Europe now, and we start from England, as there was no, of course, Premier League regular action. There was a game, of course, that was rescheduled. Burnley hosting Watford. That game ended 0-0 in Turf Moor. There was some FA Cup action, of course, 4th round action from the FA Cup, and it was pretty interesting. There was no big surprises, I would assume, as far as this round is concerned, but definitely there was some interesting sort of twists and in the tails of some of those matches. Of course, yesterday, on Friday, actually, Middlesbrough eliminated Man United. We talked about that on Saturday's recap of the day on penalties. Then on Saturday, it was even more dramatic. for both Chelsea and West Ham, who kicked off things, and they had some earlier kickoffs in the FA Cup. Of course, Chelsea and faced Plymouth, defeated them 2-1 after extra time. The goals, they were actually down. They conceded early by Mukali Gillespie in the 8th minute as Piliqueta equalises in the 41st, and the game went all the way to extra time, where Marcos Alonso scored what turns out to be the winner in the 105th minute of that extra time. Of course, a big moment in the game was Ryan Hardy missing a penalty for Plymouth, saved by Kepa. I mean, it was a pretty basic penalty that deserved to be missed, to be fair. West Ham, on the other hand, they had a much more dramatic, I would say, comeback in that game. They were down as well against Kidderminster away from home. It was a tough tie, as expected. Declan Rice managed to get them a very late goal in the 90 minutes to keep them in the game and to get them to extra time. It was heartbreaking, I think, for Kidderminster in particular. Twice they will be on the edge of, if you're getting something out of that game, on winning in the 90 minutes and then on getting the game to penalties to raise their chances or to have better chances. Jared Bowen in the 120th minute gets the winner for West Ham. Pretty heartbreaking stuff. Elsewhere, Crystal Palace qualified, beating Hartlepool United 2-0. Everton managed to thrash Brentford 4-1. Huddersfield defeated Barnsley 1-0. Man City, unsurprisingly, thrashed Fulham 4-1. Mahrez scoring a brace in that game. Peterborough defeated Queen's Park Rangers 2-0. Southampton, after extra time, defeated Coventry City 2-1. Stoke City defeated Wigan Athletic 2-0. Norwich City beat Wolverhampton away 1-0. Kind of surprise. Luton Town qualified, beating Cambridge United 3-0. And Tottenham Hotspur defeated Brighton and Hove Albion 3-1. So no real surprises, no real problems here. There were some issues, obviously, as I mentioned, twists in the tails for both the Londonese side, let's say Chelsea and Spurs as well. The action continues, of course, on Sunday. It is Liverpool versus Cardiff City. You expect that to be pretty easy for Liverpool, even with Mane and Salah still on AFCON duties, going all the way. Then Nottingham Forest, Leicester City, and the 4th round finishes by Bournemouth playing Boreham Wood, the last game on Sunday. We move on to Germany, and round 21 of the Bundesliga continued on Saturday. It started with Hertha Berlin drawing against VfL Bochum. We talked about that in the recap on Saturday, and of course yesterday it was 6 matches on the menu. FC Köln defeated Freiburg 1-0. A shocking result, I would say, for all I know, because of Freiburg's really decent season so far. Köln actually gets the 6th with this victory, just 1 point behind them, 2 behind Union Berlin, and 3 behind Leverkusen at 3rd. Of course, they play against Dortmund on Sunday. This could be a big result for Köln as far as their season is concerned. Maybe they will hope for a European spot. Mainz defeated Hoffenheim 2-0. Arminia Bielefeld drawn against Mönchengladbach. Mönchengladbach continue their horrible run of form at the moment. I'm really surprised of one thing for Mönchengladbach. I'm really surprised that they didn't sack Adolf Hutter already. Like, absolutely shocked to the core that he didn't really put him to the sack after some horrendous result. Is the win against Bayern keeping him there in his job? I don't really understand, because any other coach in his situation would have been sacked already, would have looked for a new coach. Maybe it's because it's harder now to find a new coach for Borussia Mönchengladbach that will really get them a lift in the season. Obviously, this result gets them really close to that danger zone. In the Bundesliga table. They're 2 points of Wolfsburg at 16th currently. Of course, they're not that far. The worst that can happen, I would say, is that they get the 16th spot. Worst could happen. Their form is not that good at all. But I don't really think that. I don't really think that they will be relegated, although they're really close. Augsburg defeated Union Berlin, I would say surprisingly, 2-0, but it is a big result for them as they get out of the relegation zone just momentarily, I would say, because they could be back there with Wolfsburg, who play Greuther Fürth. Surely Wolfsburg have to win that game against Greuther Fürth. on Sunday. Stuttgart were the leaders against Frankfurt, but Eintracht Frankfurt managed to turn things around and defeat them 3-2 at the end. Of course, big win for Frankfurt. Also, they are close to that top 4 spots, although they're at 9th, but they're 4 points behind Leverkusen only and 3 points behind Union Berlin. It's pretty tight as far as that middle of the table is concerned for the Bundesliga. And of course, the big main event on Saturday was Bayern Munich playing RB Leipzig at home. I talked about it in the preview. It's a hard game. It's not going to be similar to the one that Bayern played at the Red Bull Arena and defeated them 4-1. Nagelsmann went with a 3-4-3 system, a normal, system. I think in the absence of Alphonso Davies in particular, that is about the only real system you could play with. Lucas Hernandez has been too long, I think, at the position of a centre-half to just, adapt again to being a left-back. Kingsley Coman as a wing-back still works pretty fine for me. I think he was the best man on the field for Bayern. And yes, Robert Lewandowski scored a goal, the compulsory goal for him by now, but it wasn't really that good. He could have scored a couple more goals. Of course, Thomas Müller opened the scoring for Bayern early on in the 12th minute. Andre Silva in the 27th minute got the equaliser for Leipzig. And again, it's trademark Bayern goals that they concede. Like, they get so high up the pitch, they get distracted, they get completely stretched out, and you find themselves in situations where they're 4 against 3 or 3 against 4, 3 defenders against 4 attackers, and they find themselves overrun and overdone by runners from Leipzig. I mean, there were like 3 free players for Leipzig in that attack for the first goal. Nkunku chose wisely by putting it to Andre Silva, and Andre Silva slotted it home, although a bit of help, I think, from Pavard on the way in. Lewandowski gave Bayern the lead again late on in the first half. Nkunku equalised again in the second half before Gvardiol puts it in his own net, of course, for the third goal of Bayern. And I think the game took a bit of a nosedive afterwards in terms of rhythm. It felt like the players, both of them, were exhausted, really, and it definitely felt like a real slugfest by the end. It was pretty feisty and intense. There was loads of fouls in the last half an hour in particular. A big win for Bayern, although not necessarily the most impressive of wins, but I think they will take it, obviously. 9 points ahead of Dortmund at the table, of course, who play Bayer Leverkusen on Sunday, as well as, of course, Wolfsburg playing Greuther Fürth. Those games are on Sunday. As I mentioned, just to finish, it's a big win for Bayern. They won't care. It looks like they will be winning the 10th title in a row, no problems about that, but obviously the bigger fish to fry is going to be the Champions League. We'll talk about that, hopefully, in later episodes. To Spain now, and of course, La Liga. It is round 23, continued, of course, on Saturday. It kicked off on Friday with Getafe beating Levante 3-0, and on Saturday 4 games were played. Elche defeated Deportivo Alaves 3-1, Mallorca defeated Cadiz 2-1, Celta Vigo defeated Rayo Vallecano 2-0, and of course the big game, I suppose, the game with big implications for the title challenge, is Sevilla, who missed out yet again on winning and on getting 3 points for them this season, drawing against Osasuna away from home. We mentioned it in the preview, I think, for La Liga on the Friday episode. We mentioned that that this game is pretty hard. It's going to be pretty tricky for Sevilla to win, and it was indeed. Although they dominated, they really had some unbelievable chances, I think, to score in that game, but they didn't get them. They were not good enough. They weren't good enough. They didn't take their chances. They simply were not good enough to win this game. And this is the 3rd draw in a row. Overall, this is the 4th game consecutively that they're not winning, including a Copa del Rey loss against Real Betis, where they were eliminated, of course, early on the last month. It seems like Sevilla are really losing their sort of momentum. They're losing their foot off the gas in the worst moment, I would say. Yes, they're 3 points behind Madrid, but again, Madrid play Granada on Sunday. They could be winning, and that could be 6 points. And I think at that point, if it becomes 6 points, I think it's impossible for Sevilla to catch up. I don't think with these kind of results in a row, three draws in a row, I don't think with these kind of results Sevilla are able to catch up to Real Madrid. It's nigh on impossible. And again, for all the good things that Sevilla had, the solid defense, they're well shaped, they're well organized. I think missing the couple of players that they're missing at the moment, and as well as a general nature of just not being that intense offensively, not having that spark they look forward usually. They definitely a side that has so much potential but doesn't really get to that potential, doesn't really reach that potential when they need to. I mean, it's a proper problem, it's a proper dilemma now at the moment for Julian Lopetegui, why they're losing such points. I mean, they losing 6 points in the span of 3 games isn't easy considering you're in a title race. Sevilla are the only side in Spain at the moment with a legit chance of getting behind Real Madrid. If we look at it realistically, they are second on the table, 3 points behind Real Madrid. They're 7 points of Betis, the closest behind them, so that's impossible that Betis will be involved in anything at the moment. So they're the only side to have a legitimate chance, yet they seem every time to blow it for no reason, basically. They've drawn against teams, really, that they shouldn't be drawn against. I mean, all respect to Celta Vigo, all respect to Valencia, but those two sides at the moment are far from the best versions of themselves. I don't think a 10th placed Celta Vigo, I don't think an 11th placed Valencia, and certainly a 12th placed Osasuna. I mean, basically they played against 3 sides who are back to back in the table, in the middle of the table, and somehow they lost points against all the 3 of them, which is weird and very, very, I think, warning as far as Sevilla are concerned. They should be thinking how we should improve ourselves, how we should get more points. I mean, Sevilla, if they want to be close to getting the title race, I mean, the only perfect scenario is that they win the 15 games that they still have in the league, and they will wait for a Real Madrid slip somehow, somewhere in a match. I mean, it happened last week for Real Madrid, and certainly it could happen again for Real Madrid, but I don't think it will happen this week against Granada. It's now impossible, to be fair, but they are motivated by the way. Of course, they have the loss against Athletic Bilbao to avenge. I think they need to revamp themselves after that loss against Athletic Bilbao, so I really doubt Real Madrid will drop points this week. But back to Sevilla, just to close out, they're really in a big trouble at the moment in terms of getting points. And, I think maybe by next week, maybe by the next couple of weeks, we will finally see if the title race is still on or not. If Real Madrid win today, I think it is. I think it's near over, not over, but it's near over, because 6 points is hard to catch up by any side. I think even with all the positives and the qualities that Sevilla have, I don't think that they will catch up, because dropping points in these situations and the momentum, I think, is not going to be helping Sevilla anyway. And of course, to finish, we're going to go to Italy. It is Serie A, around 24, kicking off on Saturday. Genoa forced Roma into a goalless draw. Of course, both sides having men sent off in during the game. Of course, Nicolo Zaniolo was sent off for Roma late on in the game. Leo Ostergaard was sent off for Genoa, yet Roma couldn't capitalise on that advantage. A goal was cancelled for Roma late on in the game. Nicolo Zaniolo protested, and thus he got the red card for him. That will be, I think, it will be a big miss for Roma in the next game. Obviously, the next game is going to be actually against Inter Milan in the cup in the midweek, as far as Roma are concerned. Of course, Fiorentina, of course, lost to Lazio, the first game since Dusan Vlahovic moved away from the Viola to Juventus, and there was a fan sign. It's karma, I think, in its best forms. There was a fan sign that was saying, "Who needs Vlahovic? and I think it's sure to say with the result that they had, losing 3-0 to Lazio, I think it's fair to say Fiorentina needed Vlahovic on that night. It's not easy to replace him. I mean, as much as people think, oh yeah, it will be easy, they will replace him. They sold players to Juve before and they replaced them. But I think they couldn't replace him. And, Alex Cabral, first game was not that good, really. Fiorentina also had a man sent off, of course. Lucas Torreira was shown red late on in the game. I mean, by that time they were losing already 3-0, so it wasn't exactly a much of a surprise. Then, of course, the big game they're going to talk about happened between those two games, which was Inter Milan hosting AC Milan in the Madonnina derby. I talked about it in the preview. I said, you know what, AC Milan, predictably they will try and sit deep, they'll try, and hit Inter Milan on the counter, and that's what tried to happen in the first half. That's what was happening in the first half for the most part. Inter Milan trying to penetrate, trying to play quickly, trying to to move, to make spaces for themselves, but they weren't that creative, I would say. I mean, yes, they didn't have loads of possession, but they were not that much of a creative force, particularly in the first half, I thought, or the second half, I would say. I thought they were pretty, average. The first half was much better. They scored, obviously. They ended up leading in that first half, and we thought, you know what, they will try and manage the game from here. They have the better squad. They have the better players. Certainly, they could manage the game from here, and they actually, and they made some changes as if the game was over. Like, I really didn't understand why they were making these kind of changes, in the second half. Like, Alexis Sanchez was in, Federico Di Marco was in, Arturo Vidal was in. Like, these are players that when you see going down on the pitch for Inter, you say, okay, the game is over. Inter Milan do not need to exhaust themselves or to tire themselves and to run, behind the result or anything, because they won't need so. But, just as about they made those changes, 2 minutes later, Olivier Giroud scored, the equaliser for AC Milan. And the second goal was just brilliant. It was, I give Giroud a lot of slack. I think a lot of fans in football in general give Giroud a lot of slack for some reason, but he scores some beautiful goals. And the goal that he scored against Inter Milan, the second one, the way he turned Bastoni inside out and he just put it left-footed past Samir Handanovic, who couldn't do anything about it, tried to reach it, had a hand to it, but he only helped it in. Milan, I thought, were superb in that spell of like 10 minutes, where they got the 2 goals. They were absolutely superb. And then, of course, they managed to defend really well. They didn't allow any shot for Inter Milan in the second half. It was pretty rugged display, I think, from a side that were losing loads of players. They were missing the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Ante Rebic and all of that. They missed all those players, but they managed a really good, really good game. Obviously, they introduced Brahim Diaz late on. They introduced Radi Krunic late on, Junior Messias late on, I think, for more sort of experience and more defensive efforts, I think, than offensive, particularly Radi Krunic, late on in the game, to change sort of the setup and try and be more tight and not allow Inter any spaces. And they managed to do that, and they won the game. Big win, obviously, for AC Milan. That is now 1 point behind Inter. Obviously, the caveat is always that Inter have 1 game ahead of Milan. They have 1 game in hand that they still need to play. Obviously, that will be good news, I think, for the other sides. For Atalanta, it will be good news, who play Cagliari. You expect them to win. Napoli, who play Venezia away, you expect them to win as well. That could be really good if both of those sides win. Napoli would be 1 point away, and Atalanta would be 6 points. So will be 7 points away, which is, I think, reachable, because there will still be direct head-to-head matches with them, with Napoli and with Milan over the course of the next 15 fixtures left in this season. So that's where these games comes in, and also Atalanta an asterisk for them. They still have a game in hand as well, aside from the game they will play against Cagliari. So that could be 4 points, could be 3 points, who knows, by maybe a couple of weeks' time as well. So the action continues on Sunday, and on Monday, of course, Atalanta played Cagliari, Bologna plays Empoli, Sampdoria host Sassuolo, Venezia, Napoli, Udinese, Torino, Juventus host Hellas Verona, and on Sunday it will be Salernitana versus Spezia. That's it for this episode. Like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates, follow us on social media, the usernames on the screen, the links in the description. Listen on every platform available, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other one you want to, and help us, of course, reaching the 2K mark. Hopefully we do that soon enough. Just to finish off the episode, I mean, I'm finishing on a sad note, but it's need to be said. Rest in peace for Ryan, the Moroccan kid who, I mean, after 5 days of trying to rescue him, obviously it was a big story all over the world. I think after 5 days of trying to rescue him, he passed away. They managed to get him out of the well, but he was not alive. He passed away. Rest in peace for that young kid, and obviously all condolences for his family and for all of us really who felt for him in these 5 days. That's it for this episode. I'm your host HD of the PSP, and until next time, until tomorrow's episode, goodbye. Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.